The Holy Gospel for this Palm Sunday is found recorded in the Gospel according to St. Mark, chapter 11. As they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethphage and Bethany at the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent off 2 of the disciples with this instruction: "Go to the village straight ahead of you, and as soon as you enter it, you will find tethered there a colt on which no one has ridden. Untie it and bring it back. And if anyone says to you, 'Why are you doing that?' say, 'The rabbi needs it, but will send it back very soon.'" So they went off, and finding a colt tethered out on the street near a gate, they untied it. Some of the bystanders said to them, "What do you mean by untying that colt?" They answered as Jesus had told them, and the people let them take it. They brought the colt to Jesus and threw their cloaks across its back, and he sat on it. And many people spread their cloaks on the road, while others spread leafy branches which they had cut from the fields. And everyone around Jesus, in front or in back of him, cried out, "Hosanna! Blessed is the one who comes in the name of our God. Blessed is the coming reign of our ancestor David. Hosanna in the highest." Jesus entered Jerusalem and went into the temple precincts. He inspected everything there, but since it was already late in the afternoon, he went out to Bethany, accompanied by the 12. The Gospel of our Lord.
Please turn in your hymnal to 312. 312. So this has kind of like 2 parts, and each part repeats. So the first part just goes, "Jesus is coming, pave the way with branches. Jesus is coming, Hosanna." Try it. Jesus is coming, pave the way with branches. Jesus is coming, Hosanna. Then the second part goes, Hosanna. Jesus is coming, Hosanna to the Prince of Peace. Try it. Hosanna. Jesus is coming, Hosanna to the Prince of Peace. Okay, note that each of those parts repeats, and then we're going to also do the additional verses at the bottom, and finish up again with Jesus is coming. Jesus is coming, pave the way with branches. Jesus is coming, Hosanna. Jesus is coming, pave the way with branches. Jesus is coming, Hosanna. Hosanna. Jesus is coming, Hosanna to the Prince of Peace. Hosanna. Jesus is coming, Hosanna to the Prince of Peace.
God be with you. We come to the culmination of our Lenten journey with Jesus in Jerusalem. Jerusalem, the city whose name means peace, salam in Arabic, shalom in Hebrew, is anything but peaceful in the 1st century and the 21st century. This 6th Sunday in Lent is Palm Sunday and Passion Sunday. Many Christians celebrate Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem this Sunday and Jesus' resurrection next Sunday without any attention or journey through this Holy Week. The resurrection is incomprehensible without Holy Week and Jesus' Passion. The gospel is clear. Jesus entered Jerusalem on a small white donkey, or a very small young donkey, not a white stallion. What we don't often remember here is that this triumphal entry with Jesus and followers from the Mount of Olives into the center of Jerusalem, actually, this is east, right? From the Mount of Olives, I've walked this journey. From the Mount of Olives down into Old City, Jerusalem, at the same time, Pilate, followed by Roman soldiers, entered Jerusalem from the west with fear over these people gathered for the Passover week. So we hold those two. Jesus, in this nonviolent, self-sacrificial love, and Pilate, followed by soldiers and this military presence of sacrificial violence. They are very contrasting views, and they have to be held together. Only by confronting warring violence, marching into and emanating from Jerusalem in the 1st and 21st century, can we truly accompany Jesus into this Holy Week. Many people, including Mennonite Action, sing for ceasefire in Gaza now, these days. We sing to the Jerusalem-Washington collusion waging war on Palestinians. And it will happen for us again on Friday at 11 a.m. Rather than a sermon, I invite you to hear Jesus' passion so that we truly enter into this Holy Week together. I will conclude then with a story of seeing Jesus in Mark's Gospel, this story, with someone I know from Iraq. But I want us to just hear this. I will begin the Passion story, and then Teresa and Jim will continue reading through it, and then I will close with this story. I know this is long, but it's very, very important for us to truly worship and to enter into this Holy Week together. So hear the gospel of Jesus' Passion. It was 2 days before the Passover and the festival of the unleavened bread. The chief priests and scribes were looking for a way to arrest Jesus by stealth and kill him. They said, not during the festival. There may be a riot among the people. Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests in order to betray Jesus to them. When they heard it, they were pleased and promised to give Judas money. So Judas began to look for an opportunity to betray Jesus. And then there's a portion of the story that goes on where Jesus celebrated the Passover with disciples, shared the Last Supper with disciples, and sang a hymn, then led disciples out to the Mount of Olives. And he warned them that they would desert him and that Peter would betray him.
They went to a place called Gethsemane, where Jesus said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took with him Peter and James and John and began to be distressed and agitated. Jesus said to them, "My soul is deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and keep awake." Going a little farther, Jesus threw himself on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, this hour might pass from him. Jesus prayed, "Abba, for you are all things are possible. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I want, but what you want." Jesus came and found the disciples sleeping and said to Peter, "Simon, are you asleep? Could you not keep awake 1 hour? Keep awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again, Jesus went away and prayed. Once more he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy, and they did not know what to say to Jesus. Jesus came to a third time and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? Enough. The hour has come. The chosen one is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. Look, my betrayer is at hand."
And immediately, while Jesus was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived with a crowd carrying swords and clubs, including chief priests, scribes, and elders. Now the betrayer had given them a sign saying, "The one I will kiss is the man, arrest him." Judas went up to Jesus and said, "Rabbi," and kissed him. And then they laid hands on Jesus and arrested them. Jesus said to them, "Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me as though I were a rebel? Day after day I was with you in the temple teaching, and you did not arrest me. But let the scriptures be fulfilled." And all of the disciples deserted Jesus and fled.
They took Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests, the elders, and the scribes were assembled. Peter had followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest. He was sitting with the guards, warming himself at the fire. Now the chief priests and the whole council were looking for testimony against Jesus to put him to death, but they found none. Many gave false testimony against Jesus, and their testimony did not agree. The high priest stood up before them and asked Jesus, "Have you no answer? What is it that they testify against you?" But Jesus was silent. It did not answer. Again, the high priest asked him, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" Jesus said, "I am." The high priest tore his clothes and said, "Why do we still need witnesses? You've heard his blasphemy. What is your decision?" All of them condemned Jesus as deserving death. Some began to spit on Jesus, to blindfold him, and to strike him, saying, "Prophesy." The guards also took Jesus and beat him.
While Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the female servants of the high priest came by. And when she saw Peter warming himself, she stared at him and said, "You also were with Jesus, the man from Nazareth." But Peter denied it, saying, "I do not know or understand what you are talking about." And he went out into the forecourt. Then the cock crowed. The female servant, seeing Peter again, said to the bystanders, "This man is one of them." Again, Peter denied it. Later, a bystander said to Peter, "You are one of them, for you are a Galilean and you talk like one." But Peter began to curse and swear on an oath, "I do not know this man." At that moment, the cock crowed for the second time. Then Peter remembered that Jesus had said to him, "Before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." And Peter broke down and wept.
As soon as it was morning, the chief priests held a consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council. They bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, who asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "You say so." Then the chief priests accused Jesus of many things. Pilate asked him again, "Have you no answer? See how many charges they bring against you." But Jesus made no further reply, so that Pilate was amazed.
Now, at the festival, Pilate used to release a prisoner for them, anyone for whom they asked. A man called Barabbas was in prison with the insurrectionists. And so the crowd came and began to ask Pilate to do for them according to his custom. Pilate answered them, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" Pilate realized that it was out of jealousy that the chief priests had handed him over. But the chief priests stirred up the crowds to have him release Barabbas for them instead. Pilate spoke to them again, "Well then, what do you wish me to do with the man you call king of the Jews?" And they shouted back, "Crucify him!" Pilate asked them, "Well, why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him!" So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified.
Then soldiers led Jesus into the courtyard of the palace, the governor's headquarters. They clothed Jesus in a purple cloak, and after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on him. They began saluting Jesus, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They struck Jesus' head with a reed. They spat on him. They knelt down in homage to him. After mocking Jesus, they stripped him of the purple cloak and put his own clothes on him, and then they led Jesus out to be crucified.
They brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha. They offered Jesus wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. Then they crucified Jesus and divided his clothes among them, casting lots to decide what each should take. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified Jesus. The inscription of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." With Jesus they crucified 2 rebels, one on his right and one on his left. And those who passed by derided Jesus, shaking their heads and saying, "Aha! You who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself and come down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests, along with the scribes, were also mocking him among themselves and saying, "He saved others, he cannot save himself. Let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross now, so that we may see and believe." Those who were crucified with Jesus also taunted him.
When it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. At 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Then Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last. And the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. Now when the centurion who stood facing Jesus saw that he breathed his last, he said, "Truly, this man was God's chosen one." There were also women looking on from a distance, and among them were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, the younger, and of Jesus, and Salome, who followed Jesus when he was in Galilee and ministered to him, and many other women who had come up with Jesus to Jerusalem.
And when evening had come, and since it was the day of preparation, that is, the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea, a respected member of the council, who was also himself waiting expectantly for the reign of God, went boldly to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. When Pilate learned that Jesus was dead, he granted the body to Joseph. Then Joseph bought a linen cloth, and taking down the body, wrapped it in the linen cloth and laid it in a tomb that had been hewn out of rock. He then rolled a stone against the door of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joses, saw where the body was laid.
Hold Jesus' passion in your heart this Holy Week. Hear Jesus' call. Stay awake. Stay with me. Keep awake. Watch and pray. As I hold Jesus' passion in my heart, I hold a Syrian friend, Jacques Marat, on my heart. Jacques is a Syriac Catholic monk whom I met in Iraq several years ago. That Christian tradition goes back to the 1st century. It is traced to the earliest church. His stooped body was overshadowed by a beaming smile and twinkling eyes. Father Jacques led St. Elian Monastery near Homs, Syria, where war raged. In 2011, civil war erupted in Syria. Committed to interfaith dialogue and nonviolent peace building, Jacques' monastery gave sanctuary to anyone displaced by war. A respected peacemaker and trusted mediator, Father Jacques is reverentially called Abuna, which means our Father, by everyone in the area, all Muslims and Christians who lived in that region. In 2014, ISIS added another militant military force to the multi-factional Syrian civil war that was already raging. In May 2015, jihadists invaded the monastery and took Father Jacques hostage. He was tortured, causing permanent back injury so that it's painful and difficult to walk. While in captivity, Father Jacques learned all he could about his captors and about ISIS. He treated them as humans created in God's image. Jacques listened to them to learn about their life and suffering and what injustice they experienced that brought them to this place as his captors. He greeted captors with a smile, which confused and disarmed them. He attributes his smile in that situation as a gift from God. In October 2015, after almost 5 months of captivity, Muslim friends risked their lives to help Father Jacques escape, and then got him out of the country on a motorcycle. Jacques came to Dar Mariam al-Adhar Monastery, another one in the same affiliation, in Suleimani, Iraqi Kurdistan, where our CPT Iraqi Kurdistan teams lives. And that little monastery, it's an ancient monastery in the old city, is my spiritual home when I'm in Iraqi Kurdistan on the team. I met Father Jacques in that monastery on one of those occasions when I was there. One day, Jacques quietly told his story to me without a hint of malice. He said, to sum up that conversation, love is the freedom to give one's life rather than taking anyone else's life. I expressed sorrow for his suffering and gratitude for his life and witness. With a knowing smile, Jacques simply concluded, violence will never save us. Only nonviolent love will do that. He knew and lived in his heart what Benedictine Sister Joan Chittister has said: if you want to know who God is, find the space in your heart that is open to all humanity. This Holy Week, we face Jesus and Jacques, and I invite you to hold them in your heart this week, and I will show you. This is Father Jacques and my Swedish teammate, friend Annika, in the monastery, on the roof of the monastery one day when we were there. And this is my favorite picture of Jesus. My spiritual director, who's from Vancouver, Washington, also writes icons, and she created this Palestinian Jesus, which is much, much more what Jesus really looked like than the Salmon's head of Christ that we usually see. I invite you to hold them in your heart and to live with Jesus, follow Jesus in this Holy Week. Thanks be to God.